Welcome to our project. My name is Patrick.
Brandon,
Annie,
and Freya.
Our project will be about immigration.
Europe. Some Europeans worked on mining iron, coal, and chopping down forests once they immigrated to the U.S. Some U.S. citizens offered jobs to unskilled workers. These unskilled workers usually worked in rail system. In 1885, Congress passed a law. Employers shouldn't import foreigners as contract laborers. Asia. The main reason why Asians immigrated to United States, especially in California, was for gold once they heard about the gold rush. These Asians who stayed in California usually worked on mining, railroad construction, agriculture, and sugar plantations. It was very successful growing fruits and vegetables. They all faced hostility and discrimination. Asian children were separated schools from whites. Canada. Some Canadians that immigrated to the U.S. were English speaking and French Catholics. Some jobs were textile mills and lumber camps. In 1881, Massachusetts declared the Canadians are just like Chinese. They are not stream of stable settlers and nothing for their institution. Mexico. Some Mexicans worked in agriculture, farm workers, construction in Texas, and worked on railroads once they immigrated to U.S. Mexicans suffered at the hands of Americans. Racism scored as inferior, especially those with dark skin. This led to discrimination. Mexicans had low-level jobs. They commonly denied people from public facilities such as restaurants.
Some people left Europe to go to the United States because of some push factors, including there was too much population growth, there was people who were very hungry, crowded cities, and a lack of jobs. Also, there was not enough good land to make food, which meant not enough food.
A lot of factors brought people to the United States. Some factors were the idea of a free and democratic society. It was more stable to live in and have a good life. There were more natural resources, good farmland, which meant more food, and the United States had more minerals and materials than Europe and other countries.
Settlement houses were a very important thing for immigrants transitioning into America. We will now learn about settlement houses. The reason why settlement houses were made because it would help immigrants get jobs, because transitioning into America could be a very hard process. It wasn't really the easiest thing to do. The settlement houses also help people out of poverty by providing services like a daycare center, a homeless shelter, a public kitchen, and public baths. The settlement houses also provided education. Some examples are history, art, and literature. This education helped a lot of people get jobs and learn a little bit about things. The neighborhood guild was the first settlement house. It was founded by Stanton Code, and it was in New York, made in 1886. The most popular settlement house was made by Jane Addams and Ellen Starr, called the Hull House. This was located in Chicago, made in 1887. Americanization was made when Americans thought that the immigrants would destroy the American values and traditions. These values and traditions were very important to the Americans. There were guides for immigrants that would tell them American values, so they would follow the American values. So basically they were trying to force other immigrants to follow the American values so they would not change the American values. Some other Americans didn't like the immigrants because they had different cultures or religions. They didn't want the change, they wanted everything to be the same. They wanted everyone to be the same, and they wanted cultures to be the same. Some Americans thought that some immigrants could not be Americanized because of their religion, and they did not want change as well, like every other thing. And also, Americans feared that the democracy of America could be undermined by socialists and anarchists, which would cause a total disaster in the democracy. When the Chinese immigrated to the U.S., they would take any job they could get, even if this meant extremely low pay. But then, what happened was the Americans couldn't get any jobs because they were expecting high pay, or that all the jobs are taken up from the Chinese, and this made the Americans very unhappy. The economy in California eventually had a depression, but the Californians blamed the Chinese, even though it wasn't even the Chinese's fault. The Chinese were easy to blame because of their race, how they looked, and what they did, and this was just a very racist thing. The Chinese people were eventually attacked by Americans, for example, being brutally assaulted by mobs, or being murdered, or being forced out of their homes. This eventually led to the Chinese Exclusion Act, which made it extremely hard to immigrate to America if you were Chinese. Unless you were a merchant, diplomat, teacher, student, or you had family in America, you couldn't go to America. This eventually ended in 10 years.
Political bosses. These were powerful leaders who ran local politics in many cities. They were in position to provide jobs and social services for many immigrants in exchange for political support of immigrants who could vote. These supporters often voted for the boss and his slate of candidates in local elections. Nativism. Nativism had a long history in the United States before the Civil War. Nativists had opposed immigration of Irish Catholics. In the 1850s, they formed a secret political party known as the Know Nothings, because when asked a question about the group, members were told to answer, "I don't know." The Native American Party. The Native American Party, renamed the American Party in 1855 and commonly known as the Know Nothing Movement, was an American activist or nativist political party that operated nationally in the mid-1850s. Founder Louis Charles Livin.
In conclusion, our segment is immigration. The reasons for immigrating are pull and push factors. The origins of immigrants and their hardships and opportunities are Europe, Asia, North and South, meaning Mexico and Canada.
Responses for immigrations are Settlement House, Political Bosses, Americanization, Nativism, Know Nothing Party, and Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which is a yellow pearl. Immigration connects to Gilded Age because at that time there were a lot of reasons why they left, which are the pull and push factors.